Congratulations on the birth. My husband was sobbing while holding a newborn baby in the hospital room. The moment I saw that scene, I made up my mind to kill the baby. Why? Because those words of blessing weren't meant for me. Next to him was a young woman who had just given birth. What on earth was going on? As I investigated, I discovered something unbelievable, and I was shaking with sadness and anger. Just you wait. I decided to plunge my husband, who must have been at the height of happiness, into hell. I met my husband Stanley at the hospital where I worked as a nurse. He was working for a large company and had been hospitalized for a stomach ulcer due to overwork. I happened to be assigned to his care. As we talked, we discovered we were from the same state. We had many things in common, including hobbies, and we hit it off. We continued to meet even after Stanley was discharged. Sounds like something out of a drama, doesn't it? From there, our relationship developed, and we got married. I'll definitely make Amanda happy, Stanley had declared to everyone around us. True to his word, he was always kind, and I felt happy in our peaceful daily life. However, after a year of marriage, we still hadn't been blessed with a child. I thought we should seek treatment sooner rather than later, so one day, I decided to visit an OBGYN. The test results showed that I had a body that made it difficult to conceive. I had suspected as much, but when faced with the reality, I couldn't hide my distress. It's okay. Let's work on this together. We're a couple, after all. But Stanley's warm words, enveloping my anxiety, saved me. As we started fertility treatments, I thought it would be inconvenient to continue working as a nurse with busy shifts and night duties, so I transferred to a nursing facility. It was day shifts only, which was easier on my body, and I had more time with my husband. It seemed perfect. Stanley was very supportive, but time passed without us being able to conceive, and I turned 39. Amanda, I have something to talk about. Why don't we take a break from fertility treatments for a while? My husband suggested one day. Why? Don't you want children? I don't have much time, given my age. Feeling anxious, I responded with a stronger tone than intended. I can't bear to see you so down. Lately, all we talk about is this, right? Well, of course, it's hard. I can't help it. I'm trying so hard. Oh, and the doctor said you should get tested too. Huh? Are you saying it's my fault? We ended up arguing, and from that day on, things became awkward between us. Our conversations were limited to the bare necessities, and Stanley started coming home later. I guess he didn't want to face me. This isn't good for the treatment. I need to do something, I thought, and decided to make time to talk with Stanley. Just one more year, until I'm 40. I don't want to give up until then. Please. I thought that would be a good milestone, and I told my husband. All right. Let's make that our goal. After that, we worked on the treatments together again as a couple, but I still didn't get pregnant, and I reached my 40th birthday. This is what we decided. We've done all we could, so I have no regrets. I made a new resolution to live the rest of my life with Stanley, just the two of us. On our days off, we would go out together or travel, and we were enjoying ourselves to some extent. However, at some point, I noticed something odd about my husband's behavior. He seemed distracted even when he was with me, and he started breaking promises more often, using work as an excuse. "I'm just busy with work and tired. Besides, we've spent so much money on fertility treatments, so I need to work." "I see. I'm sorry." What he said made sense, and I couldn't say anything back. However, I noticed that the amount of money Stanley was putting into our joint account was decreasing, and the balance in our couple's account was getting low. "Honey, have you been withdrawing from our savings lately?" Yes. What did you use it for?" "You could have at least told me." I didn't mind him using the money, but I thought he should have consulted me beforehand. Then my husband glared at me with his eyes narrowed. "Shut up. What's wrong with me using my own money? Don't interfere with everything." Stanley had never raised his voice like that in the 7 years we'd been married, so I was surprised and shocked. Did I say something so wrong? Maybe I'm interfering too much with him, as he says. I thought I had given up on having children and changed my mindset, but maybe I was still clinging to him because he was all I had. I felt remorseful. After that incident, there was a certain coldness between us. Thinking I wanted to be emotionally independent from my husband and live my own life, I threw myself into work. Unlike when I worked in the hospital ward, I enjoyed having time to talk leisurely with the residents in the home-like facility, and I thought nursing was my true calling. One day, a resident said, "I want to go see my grandchild who was just born." When I checked with my supervisor, they said it was okay if family members accompanied them, so I ended up going along on this outing. When we arrived at the maternity ward that day, the resident was overjoyed to meet her granddaughter and the newborn baby. I decided to wait in the hallway, but as I sat in a chair, I saw a man who looked very much like my husband entering the next room. He seemed to be in a hurry and didn't notice me. "Stanley?" No, it couldn't be. I thought, but I missed the chance to call out to him. Still, feeling curious, I decided to peek into the next room. Sure enough, the man was my husband, and next to him was a smiling woman I didn't recognize. "Congratulations on the birth." Seeing him sobbing while holding the baby, I was confused about what was going on. It didn't seem like he was just there to congratulate an acquaintance. Then the next moment, Stanley hugged the woman. "You did great." "Thank you." I couldn't bear to watch anymore and left. On the bus ride back with the resident who had finished her visit, my mind was filled with thoughts of my husband. Could that person be? I didn't want to think about it, but she could only be his mistress. If so, does that mean the newborn baby is Stanley's child? It would explain why he had been coming home late and why he had been away from home so often. And maybe he had been using our savings for that woman. I considered every possible scenario and matched it with his recent behavior. In fact, the moment I saw them in the hospital room, I had an impulse to kill their baby. The woman could have children, but I couldn't. If only that baby wasn't there. My anger was directed solely at the child. But I quickly realized that it was all my husband's fault. I decided to investigate Stanley, confirm the fact of his affair, and then thoroughly punish him. First, I started taking action to gather evidence. A month later, I was waiting for my husband to come home. I had decided that day would be the day of reckoning. Why? Because the next day was my 41st birthday. I thought I would settle everything and make a fresh start. Just as I was thinking this, I heard the sound of the front door key turning. "I'm home. Why are you making such a scary face?" He looked at me with a puzzled expression as soon as he saw me. Am I? I look the same as always. More importantly, I have something important to talk about. Does it have to be now? I'm tired. Just sit down. It won't take long. I told my grumbling husband in a serious tone, leaving no room for argument. Stanley sat down across from me at the living room table, muttering, "Fine. What's this about? Don't tell me you want to start fertility treatments again." He laughed through his nose and spoke in a slightly mocking tone. "I'll cut to the chase because I don't want this to be troublesome. I saw you at the hospital a month ago." "Huh? There's nothing wrong with me." As he started to say that, my husband suddenly seemed to remember something and his face froze. I didn't elaborate and waited for his next words. "Oh, that was just me going to congratulate an acquaintance on their baby." He was trying to act calm while hiding his panic. "Oh? But you were hugging that woman, weren't you?" I turned on my smartphone that was on the table and showed it to my husband. It was a video I had secretly taken of the two of them. "She's just a huggy person, it was just for fun." My husband started making nonsensical excuses. I deliberately didn't address that and instead showed him some photos. "You even accompanied her on the day she was discharged from the hospital. That's more than just an acquaintance, isn't it?" They showed Stanley standing close to the woman holding the baby as they left the hospital. There were also pictures of him entering what seemed to be her apartment. "That's..." My husband started to say something but then fell silent. On that day, I had heard the resident's granddaughter saying, "It seems the person in the next room gave birth on the same day." So I thought their discharge day would probably be the same, and I had planned to stake out the entrance of the maternity ward on my day off from work. On the day, I had the idea to follow Stanley, so I tailed him from the morning. When he got on a bus heading in a different direction from his workplace and went straight to the hospital, I knew my guess was right. As I waited outside the hospital, my husband came out with the woman and the baby, and I captured it in photos. "So you betrayed me and had an affair with this woman, right?" Stanley wouldn't meet my eyes and didn't answer. "I have proper evidence. I think it would be better if you confessed with your own mouth." I provoked Stanley, but he just glared at me and kept his mouth shut. So I spread out several printouts of messages exchanged between my husband and his mistress on the table. They were from Stanley's smartphone, and his mistress appeared to be a 30-year-old woman named Sarah who worked at a strip club. Stanley hadn't deleted the message history, and all their exchanges were still there. There were messages like, "I love you more than anyone," and "Let's go shopping for baby clothes together next time," just like a lovey-dovey couple. Moreover, among the photos they had sent to each other, there were pictures of them hugging and kissing. Looking at someone else's phone without permission, you're the worst. I didn't think you were that kind of person. I don't want to hear that from you. I'm returning those words right back at you. That's my line. You should be grateful that I'm even staying with a defective product like you who can't have children. My husband became defiant and threw horrible words at me that cut deep into my heart. I couldn't help but frown. Men are creatures who instinctively want to leave behind offspring. That's natural. Stanley took the opportunity to attack me. For a moment, I felt like giving up, but I clenched my fists and rallied myself. That doesn't make it okay to have an affair, I retorted, but my husband turned away, showing no signs of remorse. I wanted a child of my own blood too. But that's not possible with you, is it? Maybe so. Well, Sarah is younger, so that's nice, isn't it? That's right. I fell in love at first sight when I went to the club where she works. I was so happy when I managed to win her over and start dating her. He had a dreamy expression on his face, as if remembering those times. After dating for a few months, she told me she was pregnant. Young women can get pregnant so easily. Unlike you, old hag. Stanley was saying whatever he wanted, and I almost wanted to cover my ears. After being told all that, I had no obligation to remain his wife. I see. I'm sorry for being a wife who couldn't meet your expectations. Well, it's fine. It's too late for apologies now. He was leaning back in his chair, looking quite arrogant. Then you're okay with a divorce, right? Saying that, I handed my husband the divorce papers, which I had already filled out on my side. You're well prepared. It saves me the trouble of discussing it. Stanley started signing with a grin and without any hesitation. Here, is this good enough? I took it from my husband and carefully put it in an envelope. While watching me do this, Stanley muttered to himself, 7 years, it went by in a flash. This isn't the end. The real show starts now. Next, I placed another document in front of my husband. What's this? Stanley said as he picked up the paper and looked at it intently. That's the DNA test result for your and Sarah's child. He looked at me in surprise but quickly returned his gaze to the paper. That can't be. It says here that no parental relationship is recognized. My husband raised his voice and desperately appealed to me. That's what it says. But it's real. What's written there is the truth. What do you mean by that? Irritated, he slammed his hand on the table. I mean exactly what it says. I deliberately echoed his words back to him. Then Stanley made an angry face and shouted, "Cut it out." I let out a big sigh. There's another father for that child. You're not related by blood to that baby. Even after I said this, my husband still didn't seem to understand what it meant. I met and talked with her directly. I reluctantly decided to explain to Stanley. After Sarah was discharged, I visited her apartment while my husband was at work. There, I told her something and then confirmed whether the child was really my husband's. At first, Sarah denied it, but she finally confessed that the child's father was another man. And she agreed to do a DNA test. Before that, when I was trying to investigate her and was observing the apartment, I saw a different young man entering her home on days when Stanley didn't come. At that time, I thought maybe. Damn it. Sarah, that woman betrayed me. Stanley was making a face like he had swallowed a bitter bug while listing his grudges against his mistress. Then, as if he had realized something, he looked at me. Come to think of it, what was that thing you said you told her earlier? Ah, that. I hesitated for a moment but looked straight into his eyes to tell him the truth I had been keeping silent about. You're infertile. What? That can't be. Actually, before we stopped fertility treatments, we had gone to the hospital together as a couple and had tests done. Stanley probably thought I would give up easily if I faced reality. When I said, you should get tested too, just in case, he readily agreed at that time. Though he did add the parting shot, of course, there's nothing wrong with me. I went alone on a different day to hear the test results, and what I found out was that I still had a body that made it difficult to get pregnant, and my husband was also infertile. Of course, I intended to tell my husband about this, but he was not only coming home late but also often away from home saying he was on business trips. We kept missing each other, and I thought this wasn't something to talk about over the phone or email, so I ended up not being able to tell him. No way, there's no way that could happen to me. My husband's face turned pale, but he still wouldn't admit it. Yes, it's true. You'll understand if you look at this. I handed him the paper with the test results. Then, after staring at it intently, Stanley crumpled up the paper and threw it on the floor. He seemed to be in considerable shock, faced with a reality he had never imagined. Sarah said she's going to legally marry the other man and raise the child with him. I told Stanley this, but he just held his head in his hands and kept his face down on the table, not moving an inch. I guess he was beyond caring about that now. I have a message from Sarah. My husband raised his face vigorously, and I played an audio on my smartphone. I'm not interested in old guys like you. I prefer younger men. A woman's voice uttered lines similar to what he had just said to me. Then, even more cruel words flowed out. I only thought of you as a walking ATM. It seems Sarah had gotten pregnant with her boyfriend's child when she had no money and was wondering what to do. She thought she couldn't give up the child of the man she loved, so she planned to pretend it was the child of a strip club customer she was involved with at the time, Stanley. She figured she wouldn't have to worry about money that way. Her partner also agreed to this plan, so in the end, my husband had been thoroughly deceived by both of them. The audio ended with the dismissive words, "Thank you for spending so much money on me. From now on, I'll do my best with my husband. Don't mess with me." He pounded the table repeatedly, venting his anger that had nowhere else to go. After that, my husband suddenly became like an empty shell. At that point, I decided to deliver the final blow to him. I'll make sure you pay compensation for the affair and return the couple's savings you used without permission. As I stood up from my chair and was about to go to the room to pack my things, Stanley grabbed my arm. Wait! Don't go. Let go of me. I have nothing more to discuss with you. I don't want to be alone. I want to start over. Let's be good to each other like before. My husband clung to me, crying that he didn't want a divorce, but I shook off his hand with all my might. Then, I waved the envelope containing the divorce papers in front of his eyes. It's impossible. All that's left is to submit this. No. Give that back to me. Please. Absolutely not. It's pathetic to be fooled by a woman while drooling over her. You brought this on yourself. When I cut him off so decisively, my husband muttered, "No," and started crying out loud. The sight was so pitiful that it would instantly cool even 100 years of love. I sighed and left the place. After that, our divorce was finalized without any problems. Stanley kept whining until the end, but when I told him that I had already consulted with a lawyer and that it would cost him even more money if it went to court, he finally seemed to give up. I demanded a lump sum payment from him, $30,000 in compensation for the affair and $5,000 for the couple's savings he had used up. Stanley complained, "I can't pay that much. It's impossible." I told him to pay from his savings. However, his balance was zero. It seems he had been lavishing quite a lot on his mistress. He apparently cried to his parents, but I had already reported everything to his parents beforehand, so he was beaten and rejected for being such a terrible son. In the end, he took out a loan to pay me. I also demanded $10,000 in compensation from his mistress, which her father agreed to pay on her behalf. She said she would repay her father properly once she could work after putting her child in daycare. As for me, I'm still working as a nurse in a care facility. There's so much to learn from the facility users who are my seniors in life, and every day is fulfilling. Recently, I've set a goal to become a midwife. I'm studying for that now.